Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad you guys can join us here. It is another Tuesday night. We're doing things a little early tonight. We have 7 p.m. shows here. I think I might start doing these at 7. The timing seems to work out real good, especially when you wake up at 5 a.m. But we're going to continue our series here with the Wisconsin Conservative Conversations. And I'm going to thank everybody who's been on here up to this point. We've had a lot of great candidates. We've had people from the Assembly, the Senate, running for Lieutenant Governor, Governor, just all kinds of folks here. And we're going to keep bringing you guys more content because this is the information I think is going to be real helpful to helping you guys make educated decisions going forward here as we progress into this election season here, 2022, these midterm elections. Now, tonight on the show here, this is a guest that a lot of people have been asking for. And interestingly enough, we've actually missed contact a couple of times. First time was just purely my fault because I had a lot of things going on. But we actually made contact recently. And it's a very, very interesting gentleman because as I've gotten to know him and gotten to talk to him, I find myself learning. And that's really a good place to be in because I find that the more that you can learn, the better you become as a person. So let me introduce here Mr. Jonathan Wichmann. Jonathan, how are you tonight, sir?
Hey Ed, how are you, man? Thanks for having me on. Yeah, we were working to connect there for a while, and I know supposed to do it last week, but I just had a terrible head cold that went to my throat. You heard me; my voice was just about
Yes.
shot there on that. So, thanks for allowing me to reschedule.
Well, no, I want to apologize to you because over the summer of 20, you had reached out to me and we were talking back and forth briefly, and then I kind of went dark. And what ended up happening is I was going through some major dental surgery, and I was like, okay, I can't. I probably should have just wrote back, but you live and learn. But I was like in no position to be on cameras or anything else like that. And I tried to reconnect later, but with your guys' busy schedule, it becomes really difficult trying to connect to do something like this because you're juggling campaign, you're juggling work, you're juggling family. If you're like me, you're juggling pets, and it's kind of ridiculous, but this is life, right?
Yeah,
So I do owe you an
no
apology for that
worries.
because, again, we could have done it sooner, but that's all right.
Don't worry about it. Everything has a time and place, so no worries.
Well, I think this might work out because I think there's so much more about you that I've had the opportunity to learn and haven't actually met you in person.
Yeah,
And
you
I
did.
think
Yeah,
that
we did.
is,
We up
I
in
think
Marshfield, remember? Yeah,
Marshfield, Manawa, and I think I might have seen you in one other place.
yeah,
But that's one of those things I think is really important. You can see somebody online,
it's true.
you can hear their talking points, you can see a podcast. But to actually meet somebody in person and actually see if they're genuine or not, and that's one of the things I really enjoyed about this campaign cycle is for all of everybody's differing opinions on take your pick. I truly believe everybody is they're committed in what they believe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. Some are right, some are way off, some are in the
Yes.
middle.
Yeah, there are some that's kind of like,
Yeah,
I don't know, but let's jump into this here. I want to talk a little bit about your background because I find your background to be very interesting and I think is very relatable to what we're talking about here today. Because there's a lot of issues that we have to deal with here with this election. Everything from voter integrity to businesses that have shut down, trying to restore these businesses, entrepreneurship, and your background is business management and more specifically dealing with like SEO, more the internet side of things. Is that correct?
it began very technical. Yeah, so I have a double major, management information systems and business administration with a minor in marketing. So early on, I was heavy into development, coding, database administration. So building databases, that's kind of how my mind works, right?
Hmm.
And so it's been an advantage, though. It really has to building a strategy. For good. You got to remember, there's people out there that have strategies for evil. We've seen that
Yes.
in 2020, right? But we need equal great minds to think, to combat that, and to lead and take society and our state and our nation in a much better direction. As you know, we are going the wrong direction
Hmm.
and have been for a long time. And a little fun fact before we really get into it, Ed, maybe you can do a little research, help me out on this, but I
Yeah.
think I'm the only candidate in Wisconsin history that has been campaigning for 2 whole years. 2 years. And I
Yeah.
might be the only candidate that's gone out and gotten 1,000+ signatures all on my own. So while working a job, right, while having a wife that works full time. So, if anyone doubts my commitment to the state, and if I have the right reasons for doing this, well, let my actions speak for themselves.
Well, yeah, let's dive into that because I think this month actually celebrates what essentially would be your 2-year
Got
anniversary
it. Yeah, May
campaigning.
20th. Yeah, May 20th. I got a little celebration image we'll put out there. Yeah, you're right. 2 years. Yeah. So, I mean, what I tell people, first of all, is I'm not a politician. That's obvious. I'm a patriot. And really, again, why I got involved is a variety of reasons. But number one, it's 14 years of background of research and study. I say this all the time, 5,000+ hours of information that I have compiled up in my brain from interviews as well with mentors through many different industries, work and life experience, obviously, but more specifically, Wall Street. Understanding our financial system, our monetary system. We have a great little discussion off camera before, we came online here. And I'm very impressed with what you know. I know we're going to get really deep into it and get a lot
Yeah.
of good information and, get the gears turning. People aren't thinking. They're starting to think now more, but they're not really thinking, right? We
Mhm.
saw that the last 2 years, the mind shut down, common sense has gone out the window. And that's a bad place to be, for society.
Yeah, and I think really one of the things that you said right now just really strikes me, kind of really hits me hard because when you talk about mentors, I think there's a lot of us that at some point in our lives, I'm old enough where I can admit freely to the arrogance of my youth, where it's like, I got this, I don't need to pay attention to anybody. But the moment I started actually becoming more of that acolyte to somebody who actually knew better, to learn from them, I found myself just making huge leaps, both personally, professionally. And I think that really puts us, when you have those mentors, it puts you in a better position to put yourself into the forefront, like with what you're doing.
Yeah. Real quick too, I want to say absolute reading material for financial literacy has to be every teenager's first book. So every parent, every grandparent that cares about their children or grandchildren in the future, buy them the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Mhm.
Have you gotten into that one, Ed?
Uh, It has been a number of years since I did that, but I have read that in the past. The other one I'd also recommend would be The Richest Man in Babylon.
Yes, that's another good one. Absolutely. But yeah, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 16 years old, and it changed my life. And it is the financial literacy that we are not teaching in high schools and maybe barely even teaching in the college, right? For those who
Mhm.
don't know, I prescribe to free markets, Austrian economics. What we're operating under is I can never say it. It starts with a K. It's been a long day. But yeah, so basically means centralized economy, controlled economy, controlled markets, massive money printing when you get in trouble. And this is the reason that we're into, the situation that we're in. So,
Now let's go back to, May 20th, 2020. This is when you ended up declaring, and I think you may be right, the first person to probably have declared 2 years out.
no
Um, you initially came in running for governor. You saw a lot of problems. You saw a lot of things that need to be worked on. Obviously, we're 2 years into Governor Evers here at the helm. And we can say that very loosely, by the way. And of course, obviously, COVID with the lockdowns and all the other nonsense that had gone on. What were your motivations to wanting to jump into the gubernatorial race on the onset?
Well, yeah, first of all, it was leadership. Okay. We were lacking leadership. And again, years prior, I watched shenanigans happen, via the national, the Republican National Party and what they did to Ron Paul. Right. So I really like Ron Paul. If you ever get a chance, read End the Fed, a lot of good books there. Creature from Jekyll Island as well. And so I don't like the two-party system. I think it's a trap, honestly, right? But I've been a Republican my entire life. My mom and dad also were Republicans. And early on, you're a little naive. You think that the Republicans are the good guys. And I mean, we can argue based on ideology now. Yes, the Republicans are definitely the good guys. But there
Right.
are things, as we know, called rhinos and the establishment and what you're going up against. And they don't always have the people's best interest in mind. And so what we saw, like I said, when we went into lockdowns, and listen, a governor can give an executive order, 60 days, all right? 60 days and that's it, expires, right?
Right.
So when I saw Tony Evers go past that and then basically hand off to DHS, where DHS, is now in charge, right, of the economy by emergency order after emergency order under the pretense of a pandemic, again, right? I knew that, first of all, the Constitution was being completely ignored, obliterated. Our rights were being trampled. I mean, you agree, our rights were
Yep.
trampled for the last 2 years. It's undeniable, right? And so when I was looking there at Madison, I'm like, where are the Republicans inside the Assembly and the Senate? Where is, I said this before on a live stream. I said what I wanted to see was every day, all Republicans, Assembly and Senate, come out with press releases, live streams in front of the news, right? Any way they could, saying this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Do not comply. Open your businesses back up. We're going to have a massive supply chain issue and shortages if we don't restart the economy. And I was a little frustrated even with President Donald Trump. Yes, I said it. I
Yeah.
voted for President Trump, but I was very frustrated that he allowed the little dweeb head, Anthony Fauci, to have center stage for as long as he did under false pretense where the data was bad. Listen, Donald Trump is a sitting president of the United States. Do you not think he has top minds, top access to, to track our every move? He does, okay? So
Mhm.
if myself, a little small business owner with my own contacts within healthcare, could see that the data coming out was false, that Fauci and the news was spewing out every single day, that no, the ERs were not overrun, right? All these different things, none of that was true. Then I knew a false flag had happened. And so what is the end result? What are they trying to do, right, by doing this? And there was two things, and we get into the monetary system later. One, they had to print trillions of dollars quickly because we're on a debt-based monetary system. So you have to always expand it, otherwise it collapses. So that was a great excuse to do that. And number two, because we're getting to the end of the long in the tooth to the dollar reserve currency standard, we all know a reset's going to happen. We've seen economic resets happen specifically after World Wars I and II,
Right.
right? We had Bretton Woods agreements. So I said, okay, America has really squandered the gift that we were given early on. The new up and rising power, superpower, especially from an economy standpoint, is China. Well, it's just like any competition. When you have someone that is, really winning and doing right, eventually the crown is theirs. And so
Mhm.
America is in the process of losing the crown, and it's moving over to China. And so that's what this is happening. But what's happening is the government knows that they have to basically obliterate our rights, obliterate the Second Amendment, because we are going to have to drop so far, and people are going to be so unhappy, maybe probably violent civil unrest, that they
Right.
have to start corralling us to control us, to prepare us for a third world country. That's how hollowed out we have been. I know people can't see it right now, and it still looks like things are normal, but the whole home has been rotted out and infested, right? And the foundation is no longer there. And it just takes a little bit of a push to get the house to fall over.
Well, I think you can even take this back and go back several decades. When 1913, the Federal Reserve was founded.
Yeah.
And of course, right around the World War II, as you had mentioned, that's when America became the superpower. Around the 60s, 70s, that's when you have the decimation of the Black family unit, because prior to that, everybody was getting married. I mean, it was one man in the household, one woman in the household, and you're raising the kids. I mean, everyone I grew up with, black, white, green, yellow, whatever, had a mom and dad in the home. Rarely was it a broken home. And I think what ended up happening after that, with the push of a lot of other cultural issues, when you talk about the foundation to any society is the family unit.
You're right.
And when you start collapsing it, whether you're starting with one segment, the dominoes start falling to everybody else.
Yeah.
And we've seen it cross all socioeconomic strata, unfortunately. And where are we at today? I mean, I think people would be hard pressed to say that most of their friends are in stable nuclear families.
Right. Yeah, you gave a great historical outline, and like I said, we talked about this offline as well. You have to follow the money
Mhm.
to really understand the picture and the control. I'm after the system. I want to restructure, reframe the system back to the original that our founding fathers had in mind for it. We have to get back to honest money. We're coming to a crossroads here on a global scale. It's not just America, but on a global scale,
Yeah.
where we're going to be forced as humanity to choose: are we going to enter into the digital, a
Mhm.
globalist currency, which is the final trap for humanity? Or are we going to maintain and fight for our sovereignty here in this country and get back to honest money, which is basically gold and silver? You can't have it any other way. The golden era for this country and why it did so well was because basically after World War II, at the Bretton Woods agreements, okay, all of the countries agreed to peg to the dollar, but the dollar had to be pegged to gold. That was the
Right.
thing. And the gold kept government in check just for a while. And it's funny to see
Mhm.
how quickly politicians start to sell out, how they want to drive up deficits, right? How they overspend, right? And take on more debt. And so as they began to inflate the currency, our trading partners, specifically, France and others, said, wait, you got too many dollars going out and circulate, paper dollars in circulation. We're going to call their bluff and we're going to call in our gold. So a massive gold outflow, physical gold outflow,
Right.
was going out from the Treasury, Fort Knox, from this country. And that's why Nixon had to come on August of 1971 and close the gold window temporarily, right? Always
Mhm.
temporarily. But
Well, and
what's
that's why they
interesting
tied it to the petrodollar.
Right. Then we moved to petrodollar. But what's interesting is 1979 is when we opened our trade borders to China. Okay. And the reason for that, I believe, my personal belief, is that the politicians knew that they had to have a wealth effect feeling within America. So those cheap goods, right, we can buy in mass
Mhm.
quantities, gave us the illusion that we were still wealthy and we were doing fine. But beneath the surface, what was happening is as we sold our country off to China, there goes our manufacturing, there goes our intellectual property, right? It all
Yep.
goes over there, and we're being hollowed out. So, and that's why we had the oil shock, right? Everything with oil price, gas prices, and inflation, and inflation was running rampant at that time. And again, there was a possible opportunity where maybe things would get really bad, but for once in a long time, it was very strange. But Paul Volcker, the Federal Reserve Chairman at that time, actually had the guts to raise interest rates up to 20%, to actually get
Mhm.
above and over the rate of inflation and bring it back down. And that's why you had house price collapsing. Jobs were almost impossible to find. Anyone who lived through that time knows a very difficult time.
Well, and it's funny because I don't think people quite grasp that. I mean, I think people are having a hard time. I'm seeing articles where like the housing market right now, I think that, for a new home, if you're gonna, purchase one, you're looking at like 5.5% as your interest rate. But a lot of people don't understand that this needs to go up extremely higher just in order to keep pace with inflation. Otherwise, can we say Weimar Republic? Can we say, what was it, Venezuela? I mean, there's a lot of countries. I mean, everyone in Somalia is a billionaire,
Trillionaire. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Zimbabwe trillionaires. Yeah, no, inflating your currency never works, And so when you look to history and you look to governments of those countries, I'm gonna call it right here. I believe that our government and the Federal Reserve is going to take the same way out every other country's done, and they're going to inflate the currency, inflate those trillions upon trillions, and just obliterate the currency, because they can't default honestly. Defaulting honestly would say, yeah, we're bankrupt. And we can't pay our obligations, meaning Social Security, Medicaid,
yes,
Medicare, all that's tied in. And I know that's hard to hear, especially if you're someone who's retired and you paid into that your whole life. But I'm going to tell you straight up, and don't hate the messenger, but it's a Ponzi scheme. That's all
yeah.
it is. It's on a national level. It's a Ponzi scheme. So
The idea of retirement doesn't even register with me anymore. Um, that's why you got to find something you love to do and just be good at it. Now, I
yeah.
want to jump back here,
Mhm.
and everything's political, so I can't say let's go back to the political arena. Everything's political.
Sure.
Um, but So recently, in a few months back, you had went and stepped down from the governor's race,
Mhm.
and I want to address this one here because I think a lot of my listeners haven't necessarily either understood or heard necessarily what your perspective was on doing that to jump into the lieutenant governor's race. And I was hoping you might be able to elaborate on that. And again, for me, it would be, I'm always about learning more, and this would be
Sure.
something I
Absolutely.
think
No,
you could certainly
that's
speak
totally.
to.
Yeah, not a problem. So like I said, when I jumped in, excuse me, May of 2020, it had to be for governor. And there was a variety of reasons. One, I knew the path we were going down. I understood the playbook of the enemy very well. And I knew that Tony Evers was a puppet. Okay. And someone had to directly challenge Tony Evers and his policy, even though it wasn't coming from him, it was coming from, his puppet masters. Right. And the only way to do that is you had to run for governor because it's a title thing. You just had to challenge the title. But going on, being an outsider, listen, I understand, campaigns are expensive. I get that.
Right.
I don't agree that it takes millions of dollars to necessarily win. And I can get that a little bit later, but there is a monetary component to it. So in the back of my mind, I knew that there's a lot of variables happening, but this is my way to serve. Again, it's my form of service, and no one else was stepping up to the plate in the way that I wanted to see. There was a very
Mhm.
specific type of leadership and they had to know and speak a certain way. If I knew if they really knew what they're talking about, they had to speak a certain way. At the same time, I used the opportunity to educate. You obviously seen I have tons of podcasts and
Yep.
videos on so many different topics. And I realized that where we are in the cycle of our nation and an empire, we're in the downfall cycle.
Mhm.
And the only prayer that we have to get out of this is through the younger generation, but also proper education of things that actually matter that are impacting people's lives, voters. We have to educate voters and bring them up to a higher level, right? This, politicians and political campaigns, they dumb things down so bad. I mean, even when I've been out on the campaign trail, it's like the mind of a typical voter is just like check a box, right? Either Republican or Democrat, and a one generic typical issue, right? I mean,
Right.
it's our roads or this, and that's like, no. We have something huge going on, medical freedom, right? We came under medical martial law, and no one seemed to even care. And I found that very concerning.
Mhm.
Americans failed the test. There was a beta test that went down in 2020, 21, and we failed it. And that's what was scary to me. So I knew it was going to take someone who would fight really hard to try to push back on this monster. So at the same time, also, and if you go back to I know we're gonna get into my Wisconsin voice too. I knew there
Yes.
was problems, major problems with the election, the presidential election in 2020. We also had suspicions about Walker's own election and the ballot dumps there. So I was aware that fraud had happened, and there was no guarantee going into 2022 midterms. But you have to try. You have to still show up and try, because the moment you quit and give up, that's when you lose completely, right? So campaigns are mathematics. I knew what my margin was. I knew I had a certain margin, especially going up against Becky, and a few others. And the other thing is, Becky doesn't take away from my base and my voters. Kevin Nicholson doesn't take away from my base and my voters. Well, essentially, what I'm saying is it doesn't split my vote, right?
Right.
But when Timothy Rantham entered the race, it was a direct split. And the reason why was obviously, what was going on. It was everything with election integrity, which I was out at the rallies. I supported it. And I was looking within the assembly. I said, hey, is there anyone there that's not bought off? Is there anyone that hasn't paid to play? Is there anyone that's not beholden to Robin Voss? And it was very difficult to find, someone that would challenge Robin Voss. And so when Timothy Rantham, finally started to create a name for himself and fighting against Robin Voss, digging deep, he's in the weeds there, and obviously he got some attention from President Trump. I said, well, we have to support this person. I didn't know he was going to run for governor, right?
Right.
I could never known that. So I'm like, well, we got to support him. So I was very vocal in supporting him. Yes, we need to. And obviously many patriot groups and other people supported as well. So when he decided to enter the governor's race, yeah, it was frustrating for sure. But at the same time, when I began this, I said, what I'm doing is for the good of the state. All right. I
Right.
am a servant to the state. It's not about me. So, and I demonstrate, I don't know any other candidate that has been campaigning for close to 2 years, right? Has gotten all the support, built this huge base, and then say, you know what, for the sake of the state, our freedom, there's someone actually a little bit, on this very critical issue, right, that might be a little bit better equipped to handle
Mhm.
this than what I was. And we need to let him go, forward with this, support him. And I'll move to lieutenant governor race. I can still be effective here. Doesn't mean that I won't run for governor again or have the opportunity, right? But for
Right.
right now, this point in time in history in Wisconsin, in America, this is what Wisconsin needs. And that was my goal from the very beginning. I was looking for patriots to try and build, I guess, this constitutional team, if you will, to come
Mhm.
as one, because we're going up against a huge machine. And
Right.
there's a lot of rot there, right? And there's, so one person fighting it alone, just like in military battle, not good, right? You don't want to waste resources and soldiers on a hill that isn't worth dying on, right? So you got to make sure that you're wise. And that was a type of vision and strategy that I was trying to execute early on. But again, there's a lot of variables, to account for. So when he came into the race, I had to make a decision, because had I stayed in, basically him and I would have split, directly split a vote, and we both would lose. We both would lose. And then we're going to have an establishment rhino walk right in, who's not equipped, does not understand the issues, is not pro-life, right? I'm just speaking of Rebecca Clayfish. And I didn't want to see that happen. So that's your answer.
So when you look at now having running for lieutenant governor at this point, what do you see the role of the lieutenant governor as being? Because I think, having talked to several different people running for lieutenant governor, I've gotten a few different answers from different people on how they see that particular role. Yourself now a candidate for lieutenant governor, how do you see it?
Sure. A lot of the lieutenant governor candidates have borrowed a lot of my style and my talking points. All right, let's get that on record. So even though I've switched to the lieutenant governor's race, you can't take the governor and leader out of me. It's innate, right? It's right. Who I am. So that type of leadership and vision is always going to be with me, even though I'm in the second role, right, the lieutenant governor. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do the exact same thing that I was doing now as a candidate. I basically built my platform from nothing, from zero. Okay. Right. And I reached hundreds of thousands of people per month. But, early on in the early days, when I put the call to actions out to call Robin Voss, to email him, my one call to action would blow up his phone lines. It would blow up and clog his emails. Right. We'd irritate the heck out of Robin Voss and his staff. So much so that, I don't know if you saw that video, but Robin Voss actually had to address and say my name in a live news conference in Madison when it came, right, with Timothy Rantham, right? And he tried to say, oh, yeah, that guy will barely get 1% of the vote, blah, blah, blah. So Robin Voss is very annoyed by me and people like me, because he wants, especially me, he wants me to just go away. That's what he wants. Actually, right. The whole establishment party would just love it if Wichmann would just go away, right? And so that's been their plan and strategy, and things that they're trying to manipulate behind the scenes to try and make sure that I don't get in, because they know what I'm after. They know what I'm willing to expose. They know I'm not bought and paid for by anyone, obviously. And those who are make up these crazy lies, all you have to do is look at campaign finance reports, all transparent. I don't have $3 million in my account, right? But what I have done from the resources and great and amazing donations and my supporters, what we've done together is phenomenal. it cannot be denied. So what I put out there to Paul Farrow and everyone else is, imagine if y'all had backed me. Imagine if I did even just have $1 million. Tony Evers would be shaking in his boots. And here's an example for this. You remember the recall? The recall that went okay. That's a whole nother behind the scenes that most people are not aware of. But early on, when that recall happened, and again, we have to talk about whoever the organizer was. It doesn't matter. The responsibility was on the Republican Party to support that. And here's why: our constitutional rights and freedoms were infringed upon by Tony Evers and the Democratic Party. Okay, yep. The moment that happens, you don't sit back and say, well, yeah, I know it's uncomfortable. I know your small business has gotten shut down. I know you're losing everything, but just sit tight for a couple more years and we'll wait till 2022. No. That's what got us in this mess in the first place. And what really frustrated me was within the party, at the Chicken Burn, many other events, we had chairs, vice chairs, we had candidates that weren't candidates yet at that time saying, do not support the recall. They were directly telling to go against the will of the people. Okay, whatever the final count was of those signatures, and I know it was at least over 200,000. Yes, they didn't hit the 620,000 threshold to do it, but still 200,000 or whatever plus that was 200,000 Wisconsinites. Their voices saying, we are done with Tony Evers. We are appalled that he allowed Kenosha to burn. They took the side of the criminals, BLM and Antifa. We are done with him. Okay, you get 200,000 people that say that. You support that. I've been busting my tail trying, getting to the 2,000 signature minimum threshold just to be on the ballot, right? The effort of we the people to come together to get 200,000 plus signatures throughout the state, that's phenomenal. So I was beyond angry, beyond livid that the Republican Party would say this, but I know why they said it. They said it because at that time I was a declared governor candidate. And their sweetheart rhino queen, Rebecca Clayfish, was out of pocket. She wasn't ready. She couldn't do it. Okay. So it was going to be a fast track for me to bump out Tony Evers and mess up their entire plan. And Robin Voss wasn't going to allow that to happen. So they killed it. And then they tried to demonize me as if I had something to do with organizing that, which I didn't. I just said in one of my pockets, I said, when Kenosha was burning, I said, well, if this doesn't trigger some sort of recall, I don't know what does. Because look at Walker. He got recalled for something much more silly, right, by the Democrats.
Right.
And here we are, all of our rights being trampled upon, Kenosha burning, criminal riot and activity, not just there in Madison and other places, Milwaukee, and everyone's sitting back and just doing nothing about it. So that's what my supporters appreciate most about me, as I took the action. But now the onus is on the supporters. Now I need my supporters to step up and help me get across this milestone, get on the ballot, so I can advocate for them in Madison here in November.
And as you guys know, you see down there at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see Jonathan Wichmann's campaign website. Make sure you guys check it out. You want to read more about his platform. You want to see how you can contribute, how you can volunteer. Every candidate that's out here on every race coming up here into this primary, they need help with signatures. They need volunteers. They need people to donate. They just need help overall. So as always, I keep the links right down there below for you guys to check them out. Make sure you guys do that. Now, you touched on a lot of things here, and I really want to get into this one because this is, I have split feelings about a lot of things. I don't know. Maybe I just got issues or something. But when it came to Kenosha, I have issue with, and I'm hearing a lot of candidates say back the badge, back the badge, back the badge. But when we saw what happened during the COVID shutdowns, we saw a lot of officers just enforce these unconstitutional edicts. And I understand mandates at times can and will have the force of law. You want to see something ridiculous? You want to see a regulation that has the force of law? Look up what constitutes a sausage pizza. Yes, that actually exists. But when I saw cops actually shutting down church services, when I saw them standing back from the rioters and not actually going in and protecting life and property, I kind of have a problem with that, and I know there's a lot of good cops out there. I know that. But that leadership is just, it's garbage.
Right. Well, I don't have any, how I say it, we're talking about police officers, city police, right? I don't expect them to actually know the law. I think there's a lot of cronyism that happens within these departments at the higher levels. But our sheriffs, that's where it falls upon. Sheriff is a duly elected, official. So our sheriffs need to understand the constitutional rights and stand up for it. And there were good sheriffs out there that did do it for sure. Sheriff Adam Bieber was one. There's a few others, right? But we need all 72 counties, the sheriffs, to rise up and say, no, what you are decreeing is illegal. We're not going to shut down any businesses. Go pound sand. But sadly, that didn't happen. And for 240 days, Wisconsin was on lockdown.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think there was even more devastating stats that came out. I saw it toward the latter part of the summer that year. There was the rising number of mental health calls that had just went through the roof. You have people that were suicidal, young people that just were losing their grip on everything. They couldn't socialize with friends. I would see videos of these little kids, and they would see each other for the first time, and they ran up and hugged each other and started crying. And it's like, my God, do you people not realize what you have done to a whole generation of people? And then, worse yet, you shut down bars and restaurants and everything else. And I saw firsthand what happens when you have a lot of retirees and their socialization outlet is literally going out to a bar for lunch, hanging out, not even drinking cocktails, but just talking to friends. That's their socialization. And I would see some of these folks just drive around hoping they might be able to see a friend. They might open up something. And I think the mental health toll on this, Governor Evers brought this up during his State of the State address, and I thought the audacity of this man to even talk about mental health. How would you address this going forward? Because I don't think we've seen the end of this yet.
Address mental health?
Yes.
Well, I mean, from what, as a lieutenant governor, or
as a lieutenant governor, the relationships that you built to because I think the mental health issues that have gone along with this, especially for younger people, I think the long-term effects of this, we haven't even seen the end of the tunnel yet.
Sure. Well, I mean, okay, I don't want to, listen, I was raised a certain way, right? My father was a veteran in the Navy. I'm an only child. Obviously it was disciplined when I was bad, and disciplined
Mhm.
by I mean the belts. Okay, so that was a real spanking,
You
and
too?
yeah, I'm fine. I turned out just fine. So sadly, most American kids are spongy. They're very spongy, So all this online bullying. Listen, I have muscular Tourette's since I was 5.5. Do you think I haven't gotten bullied for many years of my life because I was
Right.
different? Of course I did, right? What I do, I got in martial arts. I learned how to defend myself. I learned how to punch the bully in the nose, and that was acceptable. You mess with someone, right? You on the playground, wherever you keep messing with someone, and you get popped in the face. No one batted an eye back then, right? Now, we're gonna sue you. Oh, this and that. That's the problem with our American culture. Sometimes guys just need to go duke it out. Seriously, I remember duking out with this guy. We're absolute enemies, and afterwards we became great friends.
Some of my best friends were actually, people that I used to scrap with. I remember back in the day, there was a kid who used to
Exactly.
bully me, and we got into it, and nobody wanted to mess with him.
Yeah.
And he kept
So
bullying me.
mental health, yeah, it's a real thing. Absolutely. I mean, I think we've all, suffered from it. We get to points where we start, definitely cracking. It's not good. It's not good. But you need a good support system. You need people there that really care about you. Another thing is Americans are so superficial,
Mhm.
and hypocritical. And we need to just realize that, we're all human. We're all sinners. We all have issues, but we need to help and support each other when someone's down, and life is tough. You lose a job, you lose a spouse, you lose a parent. Many things happen, right? But it's your reaction to it. And so what I really tried to do as best I can is when bad things happen to me to not perpetuate that out to others, right?
Yeah.
To sit with it and meditate and feel the pain. It's okay to feel the pain. It's okay to cry. It's okay to hurt, but it's not okay to hurt others when you're in pain. And I had to
Right.
learn that lesson the hard way when I was younger. I lost good relationships, and friendships because at that time I wasn't equipped with the tools. And there are
Mhm.
actual tools that you need to equip. I think everyone should have a therapist or a counselor or someone that they trust that you can talk to that knows how to actually advise you and equip you. The other thing is Americans, we've moved into a society full of narcissists, right?
Yep.
If you really understand what a narcissist is and how their mind operates, there's a certain set of tools that you need to use to be able to handle them, right? Or even be around them sometimes. And I'm going to tell you, the talking heads on media, Joe Biden, right, the press secretary, all of them are narcissists, and they know how to gaslight you. They've been gaslighting us for 2 years through the media, saying what you're seeing isn't real, what you're hearing isn't real, the truth is a lie, and the lie is the truth. That's all gaslighting. That's all it is.
Well, to your point earlier, yeah, the hospitals are overflowing, but yet no one's in
Right.
the parking lot.
Mhm.
You're not supposed to believe your very eyes. That was
Exactly.
just amazing.
Yeah, I know.
But you said something, and I couldn't agree with this more. As Americans, we are very superficial. I mean, what other country in the world wants for nothing? For the most part, most of us do not. We have fat, poor people. Let's just be honest about that. And I was talking to you offline here. Brand new phone. Um, we everybody's got a smartphone. Everybody's got some brand new kicks. Everyone's got a new ride. Everybody's got a PlayStation. Everyone's got you name it.
Right.
And we're so used to just being able to get what we want when we want, no questions asked. And there is, I think, this complacency that we've had, I'd say, especially over the last 30, maybe even 40 years, that I think has really kind of led us down this path of I exist, therefore I'm entitled to it. And nobody wants to actually go out and put in the work. And I think this going back to, again, one of my favorite topics, we talked about it earlier. We're going to go back to the economy because if you're not willing to put in work, Elon Musk said it bust. If you don't work, stuff doesn't exist.
Were you there? Sorry, I didn't hear what you say.
If people aren't working, people aren't making things don't exist.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Productivity. I mean, that's something we've been suffering, for a long time. Like I said, since we sold out to China, and the quick solution that the government, Federal Reserve, tried to do is they just, we're going to print the funny money out of thin air because we can, and we're just going to give it to everyone because that will solve your problems. And so that's what's actually creating the higher prices, that we're experiencing here. Most people forget. I know we're complaining about gas prices and higher food prices, but there was $3 trillion plus, $3+ trillion that was new money, new currency came into existence in 2020 alone. Okay,
Mhm.
that's astronomical, and that happened under President Trump.
Right.
So I trust me, I want to blame Joe Biden for just about everything, but the inflation that we're seeing is there's a lag to it. It doesn't just
Mhm.
print the money all of a sudden, boom, everything, right? There's a lag to it. It could be a year, 2 years, 3 years,
Yep.
right? The inflation that happened after the 2008 financial crisis, when all that quantitative easing began to happen, is all that inflation was actually stuck or put into the stock market. And then eventually the housing market, right? We see Dow, 30,000 plus points, all-time highs. It's always all-time highs in the stock market. We see our home prices. I know a lot of people that went to buy a house, they had to pay $20,000, $30,000 above ask just to even be
Mhm.
looked at, right? So these are the bubbles that we're seeing formulate. That's where that massive amount of money has stayed. But when they lock down the globe, when they lock down the nation and the state, many people had barely a couple $100 in their savings account. It only took 2 weeks for most Americans to put their hands out to government saying, help me, right?
Right.
And so the government did in many different ways, from extending welfare benefits, child tax credits, right? Actual stimulus, direct stimulus checks to them, higher levels of EBT cards, so
Mhm.
food on the cards, right? I mean, some people, again through the grapevine, on their EBT card, $2,000 sitting on their
Right.
card, right? I'm like, holy cow, $2,000 for one person,
Well,
and we
especially in
wonder why these
2020,
people
you
are.
couldn't spend that.
Yeah,
You couldn't spend that in 2020. You can today.
yeah, you
With
can
today's
now.
prices, you can today.
Yeah, so
Well, I think you bring up a good point because when you couple that all in with the eviction moratoriums and
right.
all everything that came in there, most people don't understand that over 40% as of today, over 40% of all dollars are currently in, that are in circulation have been created since May of 2020. And I believe that was May when the CARES Act was when that passed and became law.
Yeah, no, you're right. You hit the stat right on the head. So you can't jam that much new money creation, into existence in that short period of time and not expect massive inflation to hit at a time too when you told everyone to stay home, not work, right? Because
Right.
everyone kept testing for this elusive COVID, which is, as we know, is a virus and a flu. I mean, we've all gotten the flu, but the moment you test it, all of a sudden you have to stay home from work a week, sometimes 2 weeks, right? So where's that labor force, working, for production? The only temporary fix that we need right now is we need to produce more than what we consume, and that's how that'll bring prices down. But it will not ultimately solve it until we're on an honest monetary system. And I want to queue up, but that's where I talked to you about
Yep.
gold backs right here. So this is a gold back. It actually has gold infused into what looks like kind of like a paper dollar. It's bendable, it can go in a wallet. This is honest money. You could transact in this. This is constitutional money. This is what states and citizens need to get back to.
Well, when you talk about gold backs, and I remember where this conversation came because I think you were on a live stream with Justin Smith from Badger State Resistance, and you had mentioned this. And I was like, well, and I remember writing something in the comments to the effect of, well, it's not like you go around trading a gold bar. Like, how do you break
Right.
that?
Yeah.
This is exactly what you're talking about, where it is gold, it is
Yep.
tradable, it is backed by what's on there.
Yeah, so the nominal value on here you see is a 50, right? What this represents is 1/20th troy ounce of 24 karat gold. Okay, so that's what that represents. So see, everything comes back to weight. That's how
Mm,
honest money is supposed to be measured in weight. So yeah, you're talking about how do we transact outside of the dollar? Well, at some point, if you're a business person, if I was a shop, I'd take this over the dollar any day because it's going to hold
right.
and preserve its purchasing power, and it's real money in hand. And the other thing is it's decentralized. There is no Federal Reserve, right, printing massive amounts of these. It's only how much gold we can mine, gold availability that can be infused into this product. That's how much will be in circulation. That keeps price stability, right? It's funny that the
Right.
mandate of Federal Reserve was to keep prices stable. They've done anything but keep prices stable.
Now, when you talk about, trying to keep prices stable and having funds, decentralized, um, talk a little bit more about that decentralization process because I don't think a lot of people quite understand that. And I think when they hear the word decentralization, I think it just kind of goes right over their heads and they just they miss what a really good opportunity, I think.
Yeah, it really means that there is no restrictions on the flow of the money and currency. I could take this and I could, I could go over to wherever. I could go over to China, Russia, Europe, India, whatever. And this would be acknowledged and welcomed. And I could buy the equivalent amount of goods and services, roughly, right, in the other country as I could here. Now, obviously, there's different costs of labor. You're going to have cheaper labor in different countries, like India, whatever, right? So you're going to get more for this, kind of like how it was with the dollar, get more for this, but there's no central bank or one entity that has the power to start up a printing press and just start replicating trillions of these. Okay. We actually have to have the miners go and acquire, the gold, right, above ground gold, and grab it and mine it. And that, so the availability, the growth of currency can only grow as fast as new mines are discovered and more gold is actually taken in. Right, that's all you can do. And the other time is, how does a nation, how does a state acquire more of these for its treasury? Well, it's based on your exports. It's what are you producing inside of your states, right? So we make, we have cranberries, we have all these different things, we have a lot of good agriculture, right? So if we start feeding, if Wisconsin utilizes our farms and we began feeding the entire world because we could do it and it wasn't hard, right? It's plentiful. Then and other countries, are hungry and they need it, right? So all of a sudden their currency starts flowing in. To us, Wisconsin benefits. So all this, and this gold, I'm talking gold. I'm not talking paper, right? I'm talking gold. Right. So now what happens is everyone who's working, on the farm or whatever, producing or has your own business, you're acquiring more and more of these. You're saving, right? Through saving. Now you can sit back and say, well, I want to invest. So I'm going to invest in this. That's going to give me a good return. And before you know it, you got dividends and multiple streams of income where you can sit back and be like, well, I'm good now. I'm going to retire, right? I don't want to work anymore. Okay. I'll pass it on to the younger generation.
Well, and you said something, and I always feel like I catch these little gems here and there, passing on to to another generation, building generational wealth. And
Right.
you said, you brought up cranberries, and it's kind of funny to me because we're known as the dairy state, but we produce more cranberries than anything else, and California does more dairy. But that brings up the next point, and I'm really glad that you got to that, because we all know about America first. And I think anybody who listens to this broadcast, Badger State Resistance, anybody, that's a thinking, rational human being. Yeah, we have to take care of our own house. We have to take care of America. But within America, I like to see more of this Wisconsin first talk, this idea that we can be more self-sustaining as a state. We have the labor force, we have the brain power. It'd be nice to stop the brain drain, but you know what? Wisconsin is just freaking awesome. And I love it here. And trust me, I've tried to leave this state many a time, but I keep coming back. But how do we protect ourselves, number one, from an overreaching federal government, build that seawall against that overreach, and two, become more of an independent actual state as was intended from the founders?
It starts with leadership. It starts with the local level. It came down to mandates. I think it was Washington County was one that quickly early on pushed back and said, yeah, we're done. We're not going to play ball with this mask mandate. We're not going to lock down, right? We're not going to do this. So it was the lesser magistrate. And that term was coined by Pastor Matt Schuella. It's a good book. And what he really says, the doctrine of lesser magistrate, is that the local, down to the very local governments, right? Down to the very towns and villages and the lowest level throughout the state, your officials there can push back and say, we're not going to do this, right? We're not going to participate and violate the rights of our citizens. And through that, it goes right up to the top. They have no choice but to listen. I mean, the king gives the decree and no one executes the decree, then what authority does the king have, right? And that's really
well, I think, what was it? Philadelphia, they tried reinstituting their mask mandate. I want to say like 2 weeks ago. That lasted for 4 days.
Exactly.
Nobody was having it.
No one was having it. So, and then that thing, we have to remember is states' rights. We states agreed to create a union, right? To give the federal government limited, that's the key word, power. The federal government has completely overreached. So states need to say, okay, we're done with that. We're taking back our power. And it's nullification, right? Different things like that. We don't have to play ball with you, federal government, if we don't want to. That's why Ron DeSantis is really the top most amazing governor in the country, and he's doing everything absolutely right now that I can see on most policies. And he's standing up to Joe Biden. He's saying, pound sand. And that's what we need the next Republican governor to do. And that's what I offered early on when I was running for governor. And again, people appreciated that.
Certainly. Well, and it's funny you mentioned Ron DeSantis because I look at him and I see him almost as like, so if you have President Trump and he was the prototype. And I remember during the 2015 primaries and or 16 going into everything, I was entertained thoroughly. I mean, he was the bull in the china shop, just dropping bombs all over the place. It was the shakeup that was needed. One of Trump's biggest drawbacks, though, even as president, because I think he governed, a lot of people were very cautious about him, myself included, but I was really impressed how he governed as a conservative. The problem I think he had was he was his own worst enemy and that he had to fight everybody.
Right.
Like if somebody swung at him, he had to swing back. He couldn't just dismiss it.
Right.
Whereas I see DeSantis as more the, I don't know, the next version, the
sophisticated version.
I guess if you want to call it that.
Well, Ron DeSantis, he was in the military, right? Obviously, and he's a brilliant strategist, and I've observed him, and he does what I call the 80-20 rule. Okay, the 80-20 rule, you know that, right? So whatever the radical left, the liberals are saying about whatever, whether it's the trans, kids should be trans, right? Whatever crazy topic that, right? Only 20, and 20% is probably generous, but 20% of people actually buy into that and like, oh yeah, this is a great idea, for our kids in our country. 80% of Americans, whether they say anything now, the silent majority, they're like, no, we hate that. We're not going along with that. So all Ron DeSantis does is appeal to the 80%, and he wins every time. He says, no, we're not going to play ball with that. And he stands firm, though. He's a spine. He actually has a spine to stand there, in the media and tell them how it is, common sense and logic. No, we're not going to do that.
Well, I think he's got that good presentation too. He says that authoritative presence. He speaks with command. He's sure. And I think a lot of people gravitate to an individual that when they're talking, there's no question in their voice.
Right.
They're very certain in what they're telling you, and what they're telling you is straight facts. But I want to get to something else here real quick too. And I love this conversation. I know we're running short on time. We probably got about 8 minutes or so. I've got like so many notes over here. It's not even funny.
Well,
I could literally do it.
Come back at a later time. I enjoyed the conversation as well, and I appreciate you having me on.
No, and these are the conversations that I like to have with people because I feel I get to learn things. The audience gets to learn things, and I really appreciate that. But you were on a broadcast again with Justin Badger State Resistance yesterday, and you had talked about a new way of revamping the voting system. And I didn't want to.
Well, not necessarily revamping, but adding an extra layer of security to it to solve the chain of custody issue that they were having with, all these absentee and the physical ballot stuffing. You saw 2,000 mules, I assume, right? Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet, so I'm holding comments on it until I get to see it.
Okay. You don't want me to, no spoilers here?
Well, it's one of those things. It's like I hear things from this person, I hear things from that person, and it's like, you believe 95, you don't believe 95% of everything you hear, and the other 5% is like, I'm gonna watch it for myself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was really good. I highly recommend it. But when I put out the video on Wisconsin's Voice on the YouTube, I was on YouTube earlier the day. It's April 21st, 2021. Okay. So this was obviously way before 2,000 Mules came out. And it's a testament to, again, my intuition and where the problem really happened with the steal of 2020. And boy, was it a steal. I mean, the landslide win for Trump that we were all anticipating and predicting, it did happen. It did. But there was a methodical agenda to the highest levels with a ton of money beyond Zuckerbucks. I mean, we're talking $1 billion plus, that was spent on this heist. And of course, using COVID as a cover, right? So it's the proof is undeniable. I mean, any left or Democrat that tries to gaslight you once again and somehow say that Joe Biden won fair and square. And I say that I always said this earlier. I said, listen, one, either is massive fraud, okay, or two, we have a major ideology problem within our citizens and their minds to think that Joe Biden was a viable, capable president to lead us for the next 4 years.
I don't think that the two are mutually exclusive of one another. I think there was a lot of what I call NPCs that hadn't voted in like forever. Like they never heard of the word ballot. Like they confused that with ballet. And I think part of it was that during 2020, you had no sports, no concerts, no nothing, and they were just inundated with Orange Man bad, and I think that played a role into it too. But I remember when President Trump was talking earlier that night, he's like, "Yeah, we don't need another 2 a.m. Ballot dump," and lo and
Yeah.
behold, what do we get? A 2 a.m. Ballot dump.
He called it spot on for his own election. He knew something was up, something was brewing, right? But there was only so much he himself would can do. I mean,
Right.
I know how difficult it is running a statewide campaign. I can't imagine running a national campaign. I mean,
Mhm.
it's crazy, right? And so you have to be very smart, ambitious. Man with a lot of energy or woman, right, to do this with a lot of great people that are helping you. But yeah, Wisconsin's voice technology. So the easiest way to explain it, honestly, is when you buy an airline ticket and you go on a plane, you go travel somewhere, right? No one here bats an eye getting a plane ticket online. We all probably get plane ticket. We book our plane online, do we not?
Right.
Right. So okay, but it doesn't stop there. When you get to the airport, you have to, go to baggage claim, print out your tickets, check in with the flight attendant, go through TSA, right? And then a
Yep.
final check again before you actually enter the plane. So there is actually a physical ticket with a person there, verifying that you exactly are who you say you are. What 2000 Mila brought out, and what I was suspected for the longest time, is once the ballot was removed from the envelope, right, or once that ballot is put into the ballot box, that's it. We don't know who it's connected to, whether it's a valid
Mhm.
Wisconsin citizen that actually voted or not. We don't really know. The ID check up front, if you are in person, is somewhat limited. The absentees
Yeah.
and the stuff in the ballot box, there's really no one knows, right? Once that signature on the envelope is gone and it's taken out of the envelope, that's over with. So I said we have to solve that problem where the voter is disconnected from their vote. And we need two steps of authentication. We need basically the digital verified thumbprint, which is already pre-registered, right? You're pre-registered with your valid driver's license, or two pieces of mail in 30 days, no less, right? All
Right.
these different things, right? So all these checks first. Okay, you're a Wisconsin resident, you can now vote. So then you make that first imprint, and again, I have the video explaining that. And it shows how it's transparent, right? Everyone can watch in real time how the election is operating. We don't have to rely on media to dictate to us and tell us what's happening. But that physical paper ballot has a unique, secure hash to the user, right? The verified user in a QR code basically on the ballot. And once that's scanned in by a poll worker who also has to be verified and registered. So we know every poll worker has an ID, right? And we know exactly every poll worker that scanned
Mhm.
that physical paper ballot. When that goes in the secure box, if there was some sort of issue, let's say, oh my God, it got, supposedly a hack, but blockchain, and so it's impossible. It's impossible to
Right.
hack, right? But we have these two steps here. Well, you can go to the paper ballots to see what's not adding up, and you can also go to the digital ID thumbprints. All right. So at the end of this, you'll have a one person, one vote final tally. So on the .gov website, as we're all watching the statewide race for governor unfold, you'll see the unconfirmed votes. That's the people that first put the digital imprint of who they're voting for. But that ballot gets printed out either through the kiosk there at the polling station or at your home printer, right? Whatever it means it is. But you take your paper ballot into the polling place. The poll worker scans it. The moment they scan it in the system, the
Mhm.
blockchain locks and
That's
closes
right.
on you. It's right there, right? It's encrypted. It's done. And so that unique hash for you and the unique election ID that's in there as well, it knows and it locks. So if you take that ballot and I was going to copy my ballot 100 times, okay, 100 times, and I stuff it in the ballot box. The moment the first one is scanned, the rest are all obsolete. The rest don't
Right.
count. The rest do not get included whatsoever. There you go. And then lastly, and then Justin and I talked about this too in the podcast last night, is we want to return the power back to the Secretary of State, abolish the WEC. The
Yep.
Secretary of State then, after looking at all the data, it basically, every election self-audits itself. There's an audit every time, okay? And essentially there's a re-registration or a refreshing of the voter roll that happens too.
Mhm.
So you can't have like hundreds of thousands of dead people from 1929 that are voting, right?
No,
And in
no, no
doing
130-year-olds
yeah,
voting.
right. And so in doing so, then the Secretary of State, after seeing it, okay, yes, this is fair, honest, valid, complete, certify, boom,
Right.
done. There you go.
What
Now everyone can
what
sleep peacefully at night. And lastly, this gets big money out of elections too, and that's a whole nother discussion how that does that. But that's that in a nutshell.
well, and I love the whole idea about blockchain because like you said, once it's on the blockchain, you can't alter it. You can't change it. It is there. And
Right.
there's a lot of different blockchains, and we can have a full-on conversation
Sure.
about that.
Sure.
But for any naysayers, though, that have anything, about, this potential idea, and it's in its conceptual stage, but, you know, looking at this in blockchain, please understand that when they were talking vaccine passports, Mayor Bill de Blasio, Gavin Newsom, they were talking putting these vaccine passports on blockchain, in
Absolutely.
particular, one blockchain called VChain, which is more of a supply management type of blockchain, but one that would be just as effective in doing this here. So, Jonathan, we are approaching the 8 o'clock hour. Like I said, I've got a ton of notes. There's so much more we can certainly cover. I would certainly love to have you back on at some later date, because this has just been, great conversation, and I can't thank you enough for that.
Thank
But
you.
what I want to do here, you're running for lieutenant governor. I'm going to give you the last couple of minutes here, because I know, we want to try to keep this to an hour, but I always like to make sure that the candidate gets the last word for their candidacy.
I appreciate that. Well, again, thank you for having me on. And what I want to say to all the people out there is, we're in the last step here. I need help getting signatures. I want to cross that threshold with flying colors. So go to wichmannforltgovernor.com, and the first menu link at the top, get Wichmann on the ballot, click it. I have a video explaining how to fill out that form. And where to send it back, what PO box address to send it back to. So I need all hands on deck. Really, the power is back in your hands now. It's up to you guys to get good patriot candidates on the ballot, so we can continue fighting for you inside of Madison and beyond. So. We have a major economic storm on the horizon. There's not much road that can get kicked down here by the federal government, Federal Reserve. And I warned about that early on in my campaign. I've been the only candidate, both governor and now lieutenant governor, that's taken the time to educate all of you, hours on ends, multiple podcasts and videos. There's no excuse for you to say, I don't know who Jonathan Wichmann is. I don't want to hear that excuse anymore, because you have to go to my website, YouTube, Facebook. It's all there. No governor candidate, no LT governor candidate has done any of this for you. It's a labor of love that I've done for the state of Wisconsin, for my country, to protect our freedom. And I need your support. And the support right now is signatures to get ballot access. So with that, I hope everyone's doing well. God bless. And again, Ed, thanks for having me on.
No, thank you very much, sir. And like I said, I'd definitely love to invite you back, because I know we were talking off air earlier. Would love to speak more about, what money is, what financial literacy is. There's so much we can dive into. But again, I really appreciate and am very grateful for the time that you've allowed us here today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, sir. Have a good night and good luck in your campaign, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys, that was Jonathan Wichmann here, and he joined us tonight, and great conversation as always. And I'll be uploading these videos, of course. We'll be putting them up on the website. We'll be putting them up on Rumble and BitChute. We'll also be uploading them into the Caramel Conservative podcast. Actually, I'm going to be doing the audio version of the Wisconsin Conservative Conversations, so look forward for that to be there. Guys, as always, please make sure you like, share, subscribe to these episodes, share these episodes out. If you find my YouTube channel here, and I think it is somewhere in here, but it doesn't matter, find it and do a hook a brother up here. Hit me up and get a subscribe on there. Trying to get to that magic number of 1,000. We'll talk about that more, but we'll be back here in about a half hour. We're going to be going to Spreaker.com, Spreaker. We're going to be doing the live audio only show of the Caramel Conservative right about 8:30. So again, thank you, Jonathan Wichmann. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, we're going to have Jacob Vandenplas. He's a libertarian for the 8th congressional seat there. So we'll be having him on. Another great conversation coming up, and I'm sure we'll have more coming too. So on that note, good night. God bless you guys. I'll see you here in about a half hour.